Resident Evil 9 features a horrid variety of mutations and creatures, all rooted in something far more sinister beneath the surface. One of my favorite parts about this series has always been uncovering the why behind the enemy's existence, and Resident Evil 9 is no exception. An infection that runs so deep even Leon carries the same disease. So let's take a look at the lore, the theories, and the design behind every enemy in Resident Evil 9. First, I need to explain the main virus that plagues Leon and all the other main enemies as a baseline. At first, we thought it was this new Elpis virus, but it's actually a mutated strain of the infamous T-virus. Survivors of the Raccoon City incident unknowingly carried this virus for several years, but it lay dormant inside their bodies, effectively building up immunity until the recent events of the story. This is known as Stage 0, where the carrier experiences no symptoms and lives out their life normally. Stage 1 is where the virus becomes active, producing black bruises across the body. Coughing fits start to occur, and even the occasional malaise, which is a general feeling of discomfort. Stage 2, the bruises become more apparent, spreading further across the body. Numbness starts to settle in, and even hematemesis begins to occur, the vomiting of blood. Stage 3, the final stage, where the dark marks deepen and gradually cover the entire body. Excruciating pain and extreme fatigue make even the simplest movements nearly impossible. Uncontrollable vomiting of blood occurs, and patients in the terminal stage usually succumb within 1 to 2 hours. It was given a name, now known as Raccoon City Syndrome, the main affliction in Resident Evil 9. This was discovered by Dr. Victor Gideon, the main antagonist, who would use this new strain of the mutated T-virus to conduct his experiments and research. This leads us to the main enemy in the game, the zombies. Now, in RE9, the sheer variety in just the regular zombies is incredibly impressive. However, there are a few distinct differences that can explain their appearance and behaviors. The first ones we come across are within the care center. These are the recently infected, zombies who still retain fragments of their former lives. We see maids scrubbing and cleaning with a violent obsession, a towering butcher relentlessly hacking through heaps of meat, or even singers shrieking at Grace or Leon when they approach. This new strain of the T-virus preserves a disturbing thread of consciousness, making it horrifying to witness, as we can infer that the person within remains somewhat aware of their actions. Some speak in disgruntled tones, and even some apologize before dying. Now, this aligns very well with Victor Gideon and Oswald Spencer's experiments in transferring the mind into a different body. Now, as we progress through the game, the zombies become more malformed. Inside Raccoon City, they are sickly discolored, malnourished, and have lost all sense of self, becoming more animalistic in behavior. This can be explained because of their environment. Raccoon City has been abandoned for years. The zombies have had nothing to feed on for over 2 decades. Whenever we discover them, they sprout from the ground, as if the city itself was trying to bury them too. They can still perform basic actions and wield a variety of weapons, but it's clear that being trapped inside Raccoon City has deteriorated their physical form and mental state. Except for this guy, it looks like he's having fun. Now, the zombies found inside Ark are a different story. Rather than being mere Raccoon City survivors carrying a dormant T-virus, these creatures appear to be experimentally altered variants. Their exact purpose is never clearly defined, but we can make some educated guesses here. The criminal organization now known as the Connections operates Ark deep within the city, working alongside the US government to produce highly capable BOWs for profit. These Ark zombies might be failed experiments stored in pods for later study, or they could have been created to observe the natural progression of the new T-virus strain, allowing researchers to track its evolution and learn to control it. Regardless of the reasoning, these zombies are some of the most disturbing out of the numerous variety we see in-game, due to their egregious disfigurements. And remember, these are simply the regular zombies inside Resident Evil 9. Now we can dive deeper into the heavily mutated creatures. Similar to Crimson Heads from Resident Evil 1, Blister Heads are a secondary twisted mutation, an additional side effect of the T-virus strain. They're identified by their large bulbous tumor, with their brains now exposed on the backside of their heads. Due to their violent transformation, they exhibit heightened aggression. Analysis concludes that this is due to a sudden change in red blood cell patterns, which is what causes these excessive growths to appear so quickly. Inside the care center, you're introduced to a new mechanic where you can use your hemolytic injector on corpses to completely dispose of the body, by poisoning the blood. If you decide against it, a blister head may appear before your very eyes. They're not only hyper-aggressive, but prove to be more resilient and dangerous than their lesser mutated kin. It is imperative that you deal headshots or dispose of dead bodies before they can mutate into a blister head. I saw some theories online that this is a suggested middle stage evolution between the regular zombie and a licker, and I can definitely see the similarities. However, I think it's proven to be false. The true natural evolution that follows is known as the Blister Borne. It is a very rare occurrence, a mutation on top of a mutation, where the tumorous growths have spread across the entire body. It becomes much bulkier, now towering over Leon. Their face is now completely covered in sores, and endless rows of teeth occupy the mouth. It acts as a mini-boss throughout the game, and for good reason too. The only way to kill it is to destroy all the organs pulsing around its body, but with each organ that bursts, a nasty blood-like fluid sprays out. What makes this monster so terrifying is any other infected that are hit by the spraying fluid will immediately mutate into blister heads. This makes it a formidable opponent, not just because it's tough on its own, but transforming the surrounding zombies into tougher mutations is definitely way more difficult. It's a very unique mechanic that I think stands out in a phenomenal, disturbing way. Blister Heads and Blister Bornes are a natural development of the new T-virus strain. However, something far more sinister hides among the experimentation and research led by Dr. Victor Gideon. The girl is a prime example of Dr. Gideon's insidious work. Her appearance is that of a giant hag, although with slight childlike features. She has elongated appendages with thick, almost bird-like legs. Upon closer inspection, it seems that she only walks on the front of her feet. Disproportionate growths decorate her body, determining excessive cellular growth. Lore-wise, she's none other than the twin sister of Emily, the young girl we find inside the care center that Grace cares for throughout the game. In order to explain the girl's origins, I need to briefly explain the plot. Grace Ashcroft was assumed to be the key to unleashing Elpis, according to Dr. Gideon and Zeno. While in pursuit of Grace, over the years, Dr. Gideon and the Connections created countless artificial clones of Grace, attempting to create the key to release Elpis. These clones were stashed away inside the orphanage, which also revealed to be the hidden entrance to Ark. During this revelation, we get a flashback inside the orphanage from the perspective of a girl named Chloe. You can see pictures on the wall indicating the sheer amount of clones made at a time. And of course, disturbingly, they all look exactly alike. During this flashback, many of the girls went rogue, perhaps due to the T-virus because at the end of the flashback, the doctor indicates that Chloe is showing symptoms as well. Yet again, another batch of failed clones. The children sport large scars on their heads, which may suggest some sort of cranial procedure. Again, Spencer had a desire to stream consciousness into another body, so this may well be the case here. On top of this, they also feature bright, red, sinister eyes that deem even Chloe as a target. Whatever the case may be, these girls were mutated in some way. Emily was the last known clone that survived when the recent outbreak occurred. But what really caught my attention here was the hole. It's plausible that mid-transformation, Emily's twin dug a tunnel out of her cell, and now roams the various areas throughout the care center, stalking Grace and proving to be one of the scariest enemies in the entire Resident Evil franchise. Look, I know this is a lore video, so I try not to interject my personal opinion too much, but I have to say the girl is easily one of my favorite enemies in horror games at the moment. She is truly an amazing, terrifying experience in all the right ways. Now, there are other details that point to her being Emily's twin, or at least her sister in some way. She wears a similar dress, though tattered and worn. Her behavior is that of a child as well. She collects artifacts, mostly little girl dolls. But what's important here is how she treats Emily. The girl never really harms her, rather keeps her safe inside her cell. Even then, we can assume based on the monster's name alone that she is one of these failed clones of Grace. The girl is a tragic yet terrifying monster that acts as the main stalker enemy of Grace's storyline. Her main weakness is light, and eventually Grace lures the girl underneath an operable roof, killing it off for good this time. Quite the tragic ending for such an awful circumstance. What follows shortly after is the next enemy on this list, at least for a brief moment, and that's Emily herself. She is also a failed clone, and violently mutates right before Grace's eyes. She takes on the appearance of a giant distorted baby with a large spiked appendage. very similar in appearance to the other giant baby found in Resident Evil Village. However, her presence is short-lived as Leon immediately puts her down. Unfortunately, the disturbing experiments do not stop here. Ironically, another pair of twins were also experimented on by removing their satiety center inside the brain, which basically means their sensation of fullness or loss of appetite after eating was completely gone. Thomas and Timothy Jackson are a pair of giant obese monstrosities that barely fit inside the hallways of the care center. A common theme among the experimental mutations is unusual growth along the cranium, and this case does not differ with the twins here. Because of their insatiable appetite, they eat just about anything in their path, edible or not. The only difference between the two is the one twin upstairs in the attic has developed a taste for human flesh. Even the researchers were warned to take extreme caution when handling him, otherwise they end up his next meal. When Leon first encounters him, we can see the brute chomping down on a corpse before initiating the boss fight. What I really like about the twins here is they showcase the drastic contrast between Grace and Leon's gameplay. While Grace cowers and sneaks behind the giant mutant, Leon sighs and scoffs at the sight as if it's just another Tuesday. Now, these are just some of the failed experiments we see throughout Resident Evil 9, but there is a group of enemies who were developed by the connections in Dr. Gideon successfully, scientifically engineered to become bioorganic weapons. Inside ARC, we read about a few of these manufactured BOWs. The first one has been a common enemy since the first game, now known as Garmr. Forgive me if I pronounced that wrong. They're enormous dogs, bigger than the motorcycle Leon rides on, and they can easily run at 60 miles an hour. They're similar in appearance to the big dogs found in Resident Evil 4, although the size difference is staggering. Then there are the Beta 2 Lickers. The Lickers make a return, their first introduction being in Resident Evil 2. The original designs were a natural evolution of a zombie that has consumed large quantities of biomass. But the Beta 2 Lickers in 9 are properly manufactured BOWs. It seems that Victor and the Connections managed to properly wield the Lickers' heavy mutation, and have effectively been able to control and copy it for profit. Their claws are larger and sturdier, allowing for increased climbing capabilities. Their tongues are sharper now, and the Beta 2 Lickers appear to be slightly bigger compared to their original counterpart. However, perhaps one of the greatest creations yet, and the most iconic enemy to reappear from Resident Evil 2 is Mr. X, or Tyrant-501. He dons the same coat as the previous Tyrant had, but now has more bluish skin and piercing bloodshot eyes. Otherwise, he's exactly the same, except his gameplay is a more linear chase sequence rather than a free-roaming stalker. The actual boss fight is way more advanced. He immediately mutates into his Super Tyrant form, which takes heavy resemblance from the original design. Now, to be very clear, this Tyrant is not a clone of Mr. X. He's an updated model, a successor iteration within the same Tyrant program, built from the same genetic engineering framework as the T-103 that we saw in Resident Evil 2. What we're seeing now is essentially the newest generation of mass-produced Tyrants. In terms of raw strength, he appears to be comparable to Mr. X. The physical blueprint hasn't drastically changed because it didn't need to, but where this model differs is in its refinement. His intelligence has clearly been enhanced. He can wield weapons and carry out more complex directives, operating with a greater level of tactical awareness, even if the autonomy is still limited and mission-focused. However, not everything went as planned inside ARC. Even though most bioweapons were a success, some became too much to control, as is the case with Plant 43, arguably one of the biggest enemies we've seen in the entire franchise. It's uncertain whether this is the original Plant 43 from previous games or the newly updated version, but we can assume the latter due to its distinctive new features. There's also a note detailing the plant's escape from ARC, hinting that it may have been recently created. Plant 43 features a labyrinth of black vines and seedlings that act as smaller enemies during Leon's journey towards ARC. It is so massive that Plant 43 has, in the most basic idea, a mini area where Leon must kill the plant fully to progress forward. It has large tendrils that slam towards Leon during its boss fight. The large head of the plant looms ominously over Leon, waiting to strike at the perfect time. It's a rather simple boss, nothing too crazy about it. Inside Raccoon City, there is more than just the giant Plant 43. In the beginning, you find the Titan Spinner. Now, we've seen giant spider mutations before in Resident Evil 1, but none of this gargantuan size. The closest we've seen before is the Black Tiger, who is already large when compared to the regular web spinners. Now, if you don't know, web spinners were early crafted bioweapons that were considered failures, due to their lack of strength and intelligence to command. Was the Titan Spinner a new attempt at recreating the perfect spider-based bioweapon? We don't have any official information to confirm that, but I believe that the Titan Spinner is simply a byproduct of its environment. For one, there are no files dedicated to its research on this giant spider, so we can assume that it's never been experimented on or has been researched thoroughly. Secondly, the spider is located at the beginning of Raccoon City, far away from the doors of Ark. Its location doesn't match. Not to mention, it apparently had the necessary time to decorate its territory with giant webs and even have babies. Thirdly, we've seen before that insects can become infected by solely being near the T-virus. A prime example of this is the Centurion in Resident Evil 0. There are no records of James Marcus in this game experimenting on a centipede, so it's deduced that it ate something infected with the virus, and then grew to an unreasonable size. Lastly, the Black Tiger was a particular web spinner who went through excessive mutation due to a longer exposure of the T-virus. A spider festering inside the ruins of the infected Raccoon City over the past 20 plus years? Yeah, I think it makes sense that it's gotten this big, because it's been living there for so long, letting the virus thrive inside its body. It's one of my personal favorite fights in the game, and I think it's really cool. Before we talk about Victor Gideon, if you haven't bought Resident Evil 9 yet and you want to get it on Steam, you can get the game 18% off from Fanatical using my link in the description or pinned comment. I got my personal copy from them and I can verify from my experience their legitimacy. They buy straight from the publishers and developers. You also get a free mystery game on top of it. This deal will last until March 6th. So there will be a link in the pinned comment and description below if you want to buy the game and experience the horrors yourself. And of course, it helps support this channel. But for now, the last enemy we'll talk about is none other than the main antagonist himself, Dr. Victor Gideon. He was once a researcher for Umbrella, directly involved in the Tyrant project before eventually moving on to work with the Connections. After Umbrella collapsed in 2003, he quietly purchased the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center, a former Spencer Foundation facility, and turned it into the perfect front for continuing his experiments in secret. Years after the Raccoon City incident, he began studying a mysterious condition now known as Raccoon City Syndrome, tied to the dormant strain of the T-virus. But his goals went even deeper than that. He became obsessed with something called Elpis. Determined to liberate it, he worked carefully to hide his operations from outside the world. Investigative journalist Alyssa Ashcroft eventually uncovered the pieces of what he was doing, so he sent an assassin her way to end her life in 2018 before she can do anything with the information. And in a final twisted step, he infected himself with the newly modified NEY parasite, a strain that allowed him to keep his mind intact while granting him the immense strength, size, and resilience typically associated with Nemesis-type bioweapons, confirmed by Leon in their final confrontation. Victor Gideon's boss fight was certainly an interesting one. Resident Evil is not known for their extraordinary boss battles, so I kept my expectations to a minimum, and thankfully it was a bit better than that. His first phase is a normal shoot it until it dies type of deal where Victor launches a unique assault with his tendrils and electricity. Once you beat him here, much like Nemesis from Resident Evil 3, he transforms into a grotesque mass of flesh, with glowing weak spots to signify where to shoot. Again, it's nothing incredibly difficult, but it was a fun boss fight nonetheless. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. I'm not really good with outros, so thanks for watching. And if you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care everyone, and of course, stay safe.